74 seconds. That's all it took for 17 active FBI investigations to vanish, quietly, instantly, and without a single documented reason. And when the director responsible for the system was forced to explain it under oath, something happened that nobody in that hearing room expected. He froze. Not once, not twice, but again and again, as if every question was pulling him closer to a truth he could never say out loud. By the time Representative Jasmine Crockett finished with him, the entire room realized they weren't watching a simple oversight hearing.
Texas is recognized.
Man, oh man, there has been so much today, and I truly don't know where to start. So I'm just going to make sure that we start off with a few facts. So a couple of facts that we need to make clear for everyone is that, number one, Director Christopher Wray, when he was appointed to be the head of the FBI, was appointed by Donald Trump. Now, I will agree that I definitely take issue with a number of decisions that Donald Trump makes, especially when it comes to the people that he decides to appoint to very important positions, including this one, because I did have to make sure that I wasn't going crazy. But when I say that you are the least qualified FBI director in the history of the FBI, that is real, because you are the only one that never even served with the FBI prior to joining, yet we are supposed to believe that you are the greatest thing since sliced bread. I didn't ask you a question. Now, what I want to go through is to talk about why you are a failure and why, honestly, we just need to tell you bye-bye. I know that you got a little upset and you put on your show for your boss because it seems like you're trying to save your job when it came to talking to Senator Booker yesterday. But let's go through some of your failures. So before you were even confirmed, and I think one of my colleague from Georgia, pointed out that you are already targeting career officials so that you could direct illegal firings. Mind you, these cases that you were so upset about, which are the ones tied to Trump, the cases came through his handpicked FBI director. And frankly, when people sit around and say things like, oh, you know, we're happy because now we feel safe. I don't know who feels safe in this country except for the white supremacist, because I specifically as a black woman definitely don't feel safe. And frankly, my colleagues have been real nice to you today, and I applaud them, but I don't have the same demeanor because I know that multiple colleagues on this side of the aisle have faced death threats. In fact, somebody tried to kill one of my colleagues. And frankly, I don't know if this FBI or under your leadership, if those people would have been caught. I don't have any confidence in you. And if we start talking about the reasons that I lack confidence, we could start with you not just wanting to acknowledge some simple facts. Simple facts like the vast majority of the threats are coming from right-wing extremism. And I know my colleagues have tried to stress this, but I decided that I would maybe do it in a different way. Number one, I have a couple of UCs. Kim Buck, one of multiple Republicans receiving death threats for voting against Jim Jordan as House Speaker.
Without objection.
Another one, Republican lawmaker says she received death threats after voting against Jim Jordan in Speaker's race.
Without objection.
In addition, there was another one from another colleague who now is leaving Congress because they said that they were calling his wife anonymously and threatening her life to the extent that she ended up sleeping with a firearm.
Without objection.
Okay, so here's the deal. How are we supposed to have confidence when you're sitting up here telling the Senate yesterday that it will take you 14 years before you can get the FBI fully staffed to do their jobs? You're also now redirecting resources so that they can go and play ICE agents on the streets. You're getting rid of your most qualified people, and even when it came down to somebody that you consider to be a friend, you were posted up having some fancy dinner to the extent that you posted not only once erroneously, you posted twice erroneously as it relates to catching somebody, and then you want to go and say, let me take a victory lap. Because honestly, if it wasn't for parents deciding that they were going to turn in their child, it seems like y'all wouldn't have got there, even though he literally confessed online. So I'm confused about what it is that the FBI is doing except for trying to put on a show for the apprentice or whatever you want to call him. The day after all of this took place, there was domestic terrorism that was taking place at HBCUs. They were targeted. Yet I didn't hear anything from the FBI about what was going on. And again, black people kept saying, how did we end up in this? Because the numbers are so very clear that white supremacy is a problem. And honestly, I've not heard anything out of you today that makes me believe that you're gonna do anything about the white supremacy problem. The one that is leading to children being killed, children being shot, as well as members of their community as they're worshiping in their churches.
The time of the gentlelady has expired. If the gentleman would like to respond to any of that. Well, I mean, I'll respond. Kash Patel, as I said when I introduced him, public defender, former prosecutor, top staffer on the House Intelligence Committee, Deputy Director of National Intelligence with the National Security Council, Chief of Staff at the Department of Defense, and FBI Director. I think that's a pretty good resume for the guy who's now running the top law enforcement agency in our country, and we've seen all the stats that he's given to the committee on how much better they're doing at getting the bad guys than the previous guy was doing. With that, I recognize the gentleman from South Carolina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
They were watching the unraveling of something far bigger, something buried deep inside the Bureau's most protected systems, and maybe even deeper inside the man sitting at that witness table. The moment the cameras switched on, Crockett already had the room in a chokehold. A single manila folder sat in front of her, thin, almost unimpressive, yet everyone in the chamber knew documents in Washington rarely looked dangerous. It's the silence around them that gives them power. She didn't bother warming up the hearing or padding her time with flattering formalities. She went straight for the one question that would turn the entire room cold. Director Patel, can you confirm that the FBI's digital evidence logs are permanent, time-stamped, and tied to individual credentials? Routine, harmless, straightforward. The kind of question most witnesses answer in their sleep. Patel nodded. Yes. And that one word was the last moment of comfort he'd have for the rest of the hearing, because the next question was a blade. Then can you explain, Crockett said, flipping a page without looking away from him, why 17 active federal case files were reclassified as administratively sealed between 11:47 p.m. and 11:48 p.m. on February 9, 2025? The director's hand froze halfway to his water glass, and for a second the room felt like it stopped breathing with him. One by one, Crockett lined up the case numbers like she was reading a list of the missing. 17 separate investigations, fraud, corruption, obstruction, all wiped from active status under director-level credentials, all sealed within seconds of each other, all linked to one terminal inside FBI headquarters, not a random terminal, not a shared workstation, but one specifically assigned to the director himself. She slid the printout toward him. The overhead cameras caught every detail. The identical timestamps, the status labels reading administratively sealed, director authorization required, the chain of custody freeze across all files. But the most damning part was what wasn't on the page. A reason. Patel leaned forward, trying to buy time with a tone that sounded procedural. I need to review. No, Crockett cut him off. The circumstances are on the screen. There was no wiggle room. The logs were definitive. The actions were intentional. And everything pointed back to Patel's terminal. The silence that followed wasn't simple hesitation. It was something much heavier. Something calculated, and Crockett wasn't finished. She shifted to a specific case, CC 2025-1103. A federal disaster relief fraud investigation with 31 interviews, 12 subpoenas, and a grand jury referral request pending. The lead investigator was a seasoned agent named Michael Torin. On February 8th, one day before the case was sealed, Torin filed a memo marking the case urgent. Patel claimed he didn't recall the memo. So Crockett slid another document forward to an email, directly from Patel, timestamped the same day. Hold pending review. No external contact. For words that would set off a chain reaction inside the Bureau. Because the next morning, when Agent Torin attempted to access his own case to prepare the grand jury packet, he found his credentials locked out. Not restricted. Not delayed, locked. Out. The access log showed the denial came from an admin override, 14 hours before the entire case was sealed. Crockett let the room absorb that a lead agent blocked from his own investigation before it was buried. And then came the moment where the tone of the hearing shifted from tense to catastrophic. "Director," she asked, "why was the agent locked out of his own case?" Patel tried to give a procedural explanation, but Crockett cut through it again with something far more alarming. What operational necessity required deleting the forensic evidence logs? A low gasp moved through the gallery, because that wasn't speculation. That wasn't rumor. It came directly from Agent Torn himself. His formal evidence discrepancy report stated that financial records, encrypted communications, and forensic audit logs, 17 separate digital evidence items, were gone. Not sealed, not transferred, gone. Patel tried to claim evidence is sometimes moved for security reasons. Moved where? Crockett asked. Silence. Director. Moved where? Still nothing. It was the first of many answers he simply refused to give. Not because he didn't know, but because the truth was something he couldn't say with cameras rolling. Crockett pivoted to another case, EC 2023-442. A massive obstruction investigation spanning 16 months. Prosecutors were actively preparing to move forward. Yet, just like the others, it vanished during that same 74-second window. And here's where the story turned from suspicious to outright alarming. Because the day before the case was sealed, a federal prosecutor requested a status update. The next morning, she was told the case was no longer active and referred to the Office of Public Affairs, something that only happens when a case is being buried, not paused, not reassigned, buried. Crockett didn't need to spell out what that meant. Everyone in the room knew. Then came the question that locked eyes on Patel like heat-seeking missiles. Did you personally order the deletion of evidence from case CC 2025-1103? Patel said he didn't delete evidence to SO. She asked the next obvious question. Did you order someone else to delete it? He didn't answer. Not a denial, not a rebuttal, just silence. The kind of silence that tells a story all on its own. Crockett pressed further, exposing that under FBI policy, deleting evidence requires either a court order or documented chain of custody transfer. There was no court order. There was no transfer. And Patel couldn't cite either one because the files weren't moved. They were erased from the system entirely. And then came the moment that changed the hearing from a tense confrontation into a full-blown oversight crisis. Crockett placed a thick document on the table, a subpoena requiring Patel to produce every access log, reclassification order, and evidence custody record connected to the disappearances. You have 7 days, she said. Patel's eyes flicked toward the subpoena, then back to her. He insisted some material was classified. Then you'll produce it in a classified setting. Crockett answered. They both knew the implications. If files are sealed, there's usually an investigation. If files are missing, there's usually misconduct. But if files are both sealed and missing and done under director credentials, that's not protocol. That's a blackout. Crockett kept going. She laid out additional subpoenas for Patel's communications, for Agent Torn's testimony, for everyone with access to the director terminal during those 74 seconds. And then she delivered the final blow. We're referring this matter to the Inspector General for potential evidence tampering and obstruction. Patel didn't flinch, he didn't object, he didn't defend himself. He sat there with his hands flat on the table, eyes fixed on nothing. Because the truth wasn't in what he said, it was in everything he wouldn't say. The chairman finally excused him, and Patel rose with the slow, deliberate movements of someone fully aware of the cameras burning into his back. He didn't look at Crockett as he left. He didn't look at anyone. The only sound in the room was the soft click of cameras capturing what might go down as one of the most chilling walkouts in the history of congressional oversight. Crockett gathered her folder. The hearing room emptied. Reporters rushed for the exits. Staffers whispered urgently. And the subpoena she placed on the table stayed right where she set it. A reminder of everything missing, everything unanswered, and everything the director refused to explain. 17 federal investigations didn't just pause. They didn't transition. They didn't undergo routine maintenance. They vanished in 74 seconds, under one terminal, behind access walls only one man could breach. And until those logs are produced, if they ever are, those cases sit in a kind of administrative darkness the FBI never intended the public to see. Darkness that, according to the documents revealed in that hearing, only deepened after the files were sealed. Somewhere inside the FBI's classified archives, far beyond the reach of public records or routine oversight, sits the digital aftermath of those missing cases. Locked behind director-level credentials only a handful of people in the entire bureau could access. Whether those cases were hidden, destroyed, or moved into compartments even prosecutors can't reach, one thing is certain. The truth didn't vanish with those files. IT walked out of that hearing room in silence. If you found this breakdown eye-opening, make sure you hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss these deep dive stories. There's much more coming, and trust me, the next chapter in this saga is only getting darker.